we look at it from top to bottom of the entire drainage, there are some fish in the upper end. We spend a lot of time up there, but probably the number one thing you need to understand about the Animas is it is not full of fish. I don't know what a reasonable fish count is here, Tom. I don't know if you've heard. Or,
I don't know a fish per mile count on.
Yeah, I mean, it's all kind of guesswork. And some of us have been fishing this thing for these guys 30 years or so, you know. But I like to say the state of Montana considers 3,000 fish a mile. The Big Hole River has 3,000 fish a mile. That to them is considered a gold medal, like super high quality water. I think the Madison would rank up there with that. When we're fishing here, we're fishing for a lot fewer fish. Granted, some of those fish are pretty damn big. You guys have seen the pictures and you've seen the internet posts. So, you know, if we go into what those fish do on their day-to-day habits and where they live, you know, number one, what they feed on. If you look in these boxes, my daily driver is that right there, that Prince nymph. My other daily driver is going to be, I'm running out of them. There's a reason for that. There's a reason why I'm running out of them. It's going to be like a little mayfly, little midge. This is called, this bug here, I don't know, we'll pass it around a little if anybody wants. There's not much to look at on it. But this is just a generic, I think they take it for a case caddis larva. That's the number one thing that these fish eat. There are more caddis larvae in here than just about everything combined. So if you want to fish the Animas, get used to caddis larvae.
What size is that, Mike?
This one here I think is a 20, but an 18 is probably pretty standard for this fly. If you look over here on this front row, you can see some bigger ones. This big fly here is, there's three different. There's Brachycentrus caddis, which is a little taste-building caddis. That's probably the one you guys are the most familiar with. If you look down here, there's this green one that's got legs. That's a Rhycophilidae, Rhyco for short. And I forgot the name of the big one already, but there's Dichosma. What is that big one?
Hydropsyche.
Hydropsyche, that's it, the hydro. The hydro, since we had the big spill in here, that's what this one here imitates, these two big ones. We're finding more and more of those. So if you keep those three caddis larvae, this little case caddis, here's one about a 16. That's a pretty daily driver too. I'm gonna set up a little nymph rig here in a bit, just kind of show you what I would do. And they see those every day of their life. They're in there. They're going to see caddis larvae. If you stomach sample fish, you'll find them. There could be green drakes hatching, and you'll find caddis larvae. That's really important. Secondly, a lot of what we do, you know, with this nymphing stuff, that's kind of a low water thing. That's what we do right now. We can't float it very good. Probably drive a truck down it pretty good right now. We're not going to get our boats down it very good. So we're going to be waiting. We're going to do a lot of nymphing. The other flies in here are these blue-wing olive nymphs. Somebody was asking about those copper johns. Got pale morning duns, tricos, and blue-wing olives. I don't know. A few of you guys were talking about that this morning. We had one of the best olive hatches we've ever seen this year. And so beta nymphs were pretty big. But a lot of what we do is based on conditions, high flows, low flows. This box here, everybody gravitates to these. Those are the big flies. Everybody's really curious about those. When we are floating, that's a big deal. We've got some more stoneflies in the river now, so this type of stuff is pretty important. And right now is a pretty good stonefly time. They're out, they're moving. That water temperature's increasing, their metabolism's going up. That's a big bug. It's got to feed. So we're seeing those a little bit more and more. And streamers, there's a lot. There's a lot of sculpins in there. There's more of them. That sculpin population seems to be growing fairly slowly. It's not going over the top or anything, but we're seeing more and more of them. And the really big fish they definitely know what a sculpin is. Let's see if I can find one here. Here's a black one. That's probably one of my favorite. You can see it's been in a fish's mouth too. So that's a sculpin. They run about 3 inches long. Pass that around if anybody wants. And come up and look at that or whatever. And so I'll talk a little about tackle here. Does anybody got any questions about bugs or anything that lives in the Animas? Be happy to answer them.
What's a sculpin imitate?
A sculpin is a fish, and it's like a minnow. It's a fish. A streamer is imitating a sculpin. But a sculpin is a small fish. Like I said, it's about the size of that. Some other sculpin imitations. One here is maybe a little bit bigger. Yeah, it is it's a separate species. And a sculpin is I've seen them in a river in Idaho called the Big Wood. They have sculpin. I've seen sculpin that long. They can get big, and I've actually caught a couple of them that ate caddis larvae. It's happened before. But a sculpin, they're not great swimmers. They're little, short, fat. They look like a little catfish. If there's anything I could best describe them as, they look like a catfish about that long. They're kind of spiny, and it's a lot of work for a fish to eat one. But if he eats one, he doesn't have to eat again for the rest of the week. So it's worth his time to get it. And
You work them upstream or downstream?
well, most of the time, if we'll fish these out of the boat. High water conditions are great for sculpins because right now those sculpins are sitting in some heavier water, and they're a little hard for a trout to hunt them down. And they got to come out and make themselves vulnerable to catch a sculpin a lot. And they're in a hard place to catch. So when the water gets high, all the they got nowhere to go. They got to go on the bank. And that's where, kind of how you fish them. If we're floating, it's probably going to be beating the crap out of that bank with those streamers. 3 strips and out a lot of times. Not much finesse to it. And we'll use this, I set this stuff out. If you're going to fish a sculpin, a fish isn't going to be picky. He's not going to come and look at that thing like a blue-wing olive and go, he's going to make his decision right there, yes or no. And so we're fishing 10-pound maximum. If you're fishing big flies like this, don't screw around with this stupid tip. Get some maximum. Step up.
You ever use those weighted heads, skull cap?
I do. There we go. Right there. So I do use those. Yeah, that's about the right size. In fact, that's a fly that's pretty darn good here the last couple of years too. Yeah, when you're wading in lowered water conditions, I find sculpins need oxygen. They live in heavier water. They also like to feed. They feed on a lot of the same stuff trout do: black fly larvae, caddis flies, any mayflies, anything that might be in the drip. So they need to have their food coming to them. It's pretty rare that I've ever seen a sculpin in slow water. In all the years, in every place I've ever been, I don't even remember seeing a sculpin. I'll see them in the heads and tail outs of pools. That's their home.
This is a nice color, isn't it?
Yeah.
Usually, do you usually stick with the black? This seems like.
That one's a brown, and I got that black. I just to get a little contrast on there. That's one that I took it out floating in the upper San Juan one day. It's another river full of sculpins, and they chased that thing like crazy. So I went home and tied 100 of them. Bought every one of those helmets they had in here, tied them up in the next couple of days. But when that works here, that's about the size of a sculpin, and that's a pretty good profile of it too.
Did you say they were in the San Juan below the dam or way above it?
Above,
Okay.
like from Pagosa Springs and like above the reservoir. There's that river's got quite a few of them in it too. And so yeah, if you're wading, you probably want to fish these around heavy water. And there's one thing I can say about fishing in the Animas. You guys heard me mention not a ton of fish in there. I'll see guys all the time standing in a pool. I'll drive into town. There's a guy standing there fishing a streamer. I'm in town for 2 hours. I come back and he's still standing there. And I think to myself, well, he probably hasn't caught anything. If there's only 300 fish a mile, you need to move in covered water. And your technique, you don't absolutely have to be perfect with it, but you'd certainly like it to be as good as you can. The key is, if you fish one spot, and you could be fishing a spot that doesn't have a fish in it, it's very possible. And you need to move, cover water, and learn to identify the types of water where you're used to seeing fish. As somebody who guides, I can kind of walk up there and go, yeah, I know they're here. I know there's 5 fish in this run. But even with that being said, somebody may have fished that spot before me, or they might have kicked the crap out of it yesterday, and my chances of getting one are not very good. So if I fish a spot, it's pretty rare I'm going to be more than 15 minutes in any particular given run. I'll work from the tail out to the head of a pool, cover water quickly, and fish them. You don't have to cast far. Make those casts count. Try not to waste any drifts. I've always found that, and not just in the Animas, this holds true in the Roaring Fork and Madison, anywhere I've ever been. When I first walk into a pool, I catch a fish in 3 casts. And that may be the only one I catch in that whole spot, and it's time to move on. I caught that fish. Sometimes hooking a fish will put the others down. They definitely know you're there when you hook one, and it's time to move on. So I think if there's one paramount thing to success, that's it. Cover water. Be mobile. Learn to read water. What kind of water we find these fish in, I see a lot is usually probably from my waist and deeper. If you can't see the bottom, there's probably one there. If you can't see the bottom, there might be one there, but your odds are maybe 30-40% as to where the deeper that water gets. If it's chest deep and it's moving about a heavy walking speed, I like that. That's a spot we're going to fish for a while. A lot of other spots, there's a lot of places on the Animas where I've caught fish. I may have caught 1 or 2 fish in it in the last 20 years. And I'll throw a couple shots and I remember what in there. Nothing, just move on. Get out of it. Get on to the next one. Anybody got any other questions about streamer fishing or anything? If you're nymphing, you probably want to read the water and slow down. I see a lot of people walk, kind of barge right out there and start casting. And once again, that fish is, if there's a fish in the tail out and you spook it, he's going to go up, and every other fish in the center or the top of that run definitely knows something's there. They're pretty keen, suckers, whatever. When you're spooking fish, you need to slow down, you need to stop and look, just kind of look and read the pool. And I've always said your first cast should never be more than 10 feet. Get those, always pick off those first couple of, see if there's a fish close into you, and then lengthen up, open yourself up a little, and start making shots up to the top of the pool and stuff. So definitely work it thoroughly. But
You cast it across like a sweep?
I cast all up and down. I like to, if this is the river, I'm standing right here. My first cast is probably going to land right here. I'm going to work out, out. It's pretty rare. I don't ever really let my fly swing around much. I want them drifting and down in the zone. There's a lot of spots in the Animas too where you'll see you know, not just the animals, but everybody. This place is full of rocks. You know, you get all these rocks stacked up in here. This water's kind of going all over, and you look at that, and there's one particular area, like where if these were two rocks, this would be a muddy bucket below this. There'd be a little current coming in here, current around, and down below it's going to even out a little, and that's 9 out of 10 times, that's where they're at. They're really active, man. They like to get up in the front of the rocks. That's something I'm going to get into a little bit here.
You're trying to fish deep. You're trying to fish along the bottom.
Yeah, you're trying to get down, but that's another thing I'll get into in a little bit here. The difference between you nymphing like I'm used to doing, and we'll talk about Euro nymphing a little bit.
Mike, I've been throwing a dropper streamer for a few years. Do you have any thoughts on more effective or not? It doesn't matter. And it seems like I usually get action on the one on the end.
That's for me. I've always fished one fly, unless I'm nymphing. If I have a moving fly or a dry fly, I'm really partial to one fly. A big reason of that is in my guiding experience, if we have two streamers on, I'm spending too much time untangling. Two dry flies as well. Two dry flies is a disaster. And I don't know if anybody's been on a guide trip with me somewhere. We're probably fishing one fly. We're spending our time fishing, not cutting into leaders, or we're fishing. And I'm also a steelhead junkie too. And changing leaders, changing flies is a waste of time when my fish fly could be in front of the fishing. This is kind of an opinionated question. This is the way I like to fish. Other people aren't as keen on that. But for me, that's worked. So I think with the two streamers, you know, it's not something I've done. I went through a little stretch years ago where I was doing the tandem streamers. I think it's a little harder to cast for people, and I think you're going to be more effective with one fly fished well versus two flies fished just okay. So does that make sense? Communication wasn't my strong suit. I studied jazz guitar. So.
There's probably some other guy that told me to use two streamers.
Yeah, I think a lot of guides go with it. Well, this is going to sound kind of bad for me to say, but sometimes fish come up and hammer the streamer, and they miss it. That second one freaking gets it. That's why a lot of guides do that. It increases their success rate. I mean, I fished two nymphs. Believe me, plenty of fish we end up landing are hooked right here with that second nymph that went and tried to eat that first, and we got them right here. So that's why with dry flies and streamers, I prefer to use one fly. And, even then, I foul hook them from time to time. They roll on it. All right, but back to fishing. Let's get into kind of some technique here. This is an old beat up piece of tippet here, and I'm going to try to make it go away. I'm just going to take a couple of bigger flies here. You know, I do nymph with two flies on the Animas. The number one most common leader, if you back here, we have 7.5 foot 4X. I've got a whole pile of them in there. And that leader's used, gets the call most often. A little bit heavier water, you probably want to use a 3X. Some stoneflies or something like that. These fish aren't going to be that picky about stuff, man. Hey, there we go. Get into a little stonefly action, because this is kind of a big deal right now. This is my favorite stonefly, and I think this is everybody kind of the universal choice these days. Pat's rubber legs. It's the stupidest looking fly I've ever seen. For a while I wouldn't fish it because I thought it was so stupid. Then I fished alongside a friend of mine, and he just clobbered me up. He caught like 6 fish to my one. I was like, okay, I'm going to tie something. That's it. You know? And adult salmon fly patterns there too.
Do you weight those pads, rubber legs?
Yeah, these are tied. I think I've got 8 wraps of like 12, 20 gauge. Yeah, that one's definitely weighted. 20 gauge wire underneath there. Pretty much all of these kind of stonefly looking things, I put a little weight in them, and then I don't have to put on a giant 3/0 split shot or something to get down. It gives me a little help. So let's go ahead and set up a little rig, an nymph rig here. So once again, I probably would pull out, right now I'd probably take, if I wanted to fish these stoneflies, I'd use a 3X leader. That's a big fly, and trying to fish that on 5X, you're gonna break them off a lot. They just don't hold that well. Any fish that eats a stonefly is gonna be kind of Captain America down there. So it's probably gonna be a big fish. So with this stonefly here, I'll usually, oh God, I can't see with the crap in here. There we go. Something over lots of guiding you get used to doing, muscle memory. Where's the eye? With these bigger flies like this, the stonefly is pretty big. Not gonna bother. Now, that's a big fly too, so you'll take another piece of tippet here, and we will
Using four on both now?
beg pardon?
Using four on both?
Well, if I was fishing this stonefly, I'd probably have 3X on. I'd probably be using a 3X leader, 9 foot, 7.5 foot. So this is just kind of for demonstration purposes. And then I would drop some 4X off of the bend of this hook and put a little Prince nymph on the back of there.
So you like the heavier fly up top?
Yeah, I do, and I don't know. It's funny. Like I said, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Euro nymphing thing. It's not something that I'm really good at, but it's something I kind of have messed around with a little and kind of adapted a few of the techniques from it to what I like to do. So that's a big fly, and trying to cast it, if you try to tie both tippets to the hook eye, it tangles up really bad. So a heavier tippet and running off the bend of the hook, and plus is going to be more effective for you. And then we'll take and we'll put on our Hydro Psyche, or heck, even better yet, if I had to pick one, it'd be this goofy fly. Good old classic Prince nymph. Nymph-wise, this fish is once again, it's kind of like the JJ is for me. It's caught as many fish as everything else in there combined. If you live in Colorado, if you live in the Rocky Mountains, if you have 10 Prince nymphs, buy 10 more, because you're going to need them.
Are those beadhead princes?
I don't use the beadhead that much. That's kind of a personal thing. Some guys are all over the beadhead prints. I don't think it really matters. I mean, there's been times I've reached in and I was in a hurry and all there was a beadhead prince, and they ate that thing too. So.
Got about size 14.
Yeah, this is probably 14, and once again, there's a reason why this row of Prince nymphs has only got 3 left in it. That's because that's the size I've been fishing a heck of a lot. And
They like the 16s better.
14s and 16s. Some of these are 12s too. I'd say 14 and 16 are the most common that I use day to day.
So you mentioned the beadheads. What are your thoughts of weighted flies versus unweighted flies? They'll have more action, and then the sink tip.
I've heard for nymphing, I've never used a sink tip before. I've never used a sink tip line. Sink tips you don't have a lot of control of. In nymphing, we're generally using floating lines. And this is a rig, there's going to be a split shot. there's gonna be a split shot. Now remember, this is going to the end of a heavier tapered leader that's attached to my fly line. So this split shot would probably go, oh yeah, I can't see nothing. There we go. Get on there.
This young man might be able to help you right here.
No, I might have got this recruit. So, I don't know if you guys can see that. That's a really good rig in the springtime. With that stonefly, a prince nymph, caddis larva, any of that stuff would work. Would be productive right now.
So you're putting like 18 inches or more between the
Yeah.
top fly and the bottom fly.
And it's, that's kind of a personal preference thing. I've seen guys that like to run this stuff really short and really tight. I mean, their finished rig will be about half as long as mine is. I like them a little long because I really believe that the flies will drift more naturally downstream, and that's number one. It doesn't matter what the heck we're using. If we're not making it look like a stonefly and a caddis larva, they're probably not going to be that interested in it. So this same rig I would use fishing it lighter, going down, let's say this right now, if you were fishing small, I've been using a lot of 5X in here. And to me, 5X is light tippet in a freestone river like this. 4X I'd rather use in. Some guys like to use really light tippet. I don't. If I hook a fish, I want to get the damn thing. I don't want to chase it 2 miles downriver just to have it get stuck in a stick and break off. So I'm gonna 4X is on the average for me. When this water gets a little cold, we got to use these smaller, like these goofy rainbow warriors. And once again, that Frenchie nymph is a staple for me. When I got to use that, that's kind of mandatory 5X on those small flies. So, and I might run a bigger one with 4X up above it. Anybody got any other questions about this type of nymph rig or anything?
How far up was your shot?
Like I said, I like to run them pretty long. So there's the distance right there from my split shot to my stonefly or my prince nymph. I would run that same distance even if I was fishing these smaller flies too. And
So you're going to use a 3X, you say, and then a tip will essentially be 4X. Last
bet.
shot for the fly.
Once again, if I'm fishing this stonefly, I need 3X to fish this because it's so big. Trying to run that on 5X is just going to beat yourself up all day. However, I can put some 4 or 5X off the bend of this if I need to use one of those small flies. The most common rig that I'm using in here is this prince nymph. Once again, that thing's caught as many fish as everything else combined. And I'll tie my tippet to the hook of that smaller fly and get away with that. And I'm also a firm believer, if we look at this rig right here, see that tippet hanging off the bend of the hook? On small flies, the fish comes to eat that thing, it just goes right past him. You might get a hold of that tippet. So what I like to do, in a lot of cases, I'm just going to do this for demonstration's sake. With the smaller fly, I like to run them both through the eye. I really feel you kind of have to do that once you step down to smaller flies. And why I do this, all the San Juan rigs that I run are like this. Everything is eye to eye because that hook is exposed. And if a fish eats a smaller fly, I feel like I have a better shot at connecting with that fish. Like Dave, you've heard me talk about that a lot of times. That I prefer to do that. But this thing will tangle like hell with that size of fly.
16 and small.
Yeah, I would say 14 and smaller. 14 and smaller, I'm going to go eye to eye. I think once you step over for 12, you probably better need to go off the bend. But you got bigger hooks, you got a little bit more room for error there, The other technique, now this one here, this is kind of new ground for me. Euro nymphing. You guys, does everybody here familiar with what check nymphing, Euro nymphing, drop shotting? Heard it called numerous things before. Anybody ever fished with a guide on below Flaming Gorge? You've drop shotted before, because those guys swear up and down by that. I'm not a huge fan of it because it's hard to cast, and as a fisherman, I think my fishing should be fun. I want to put a rig on that's fun to cast and I feel good with. I don't want to put something on that's that damn much work. And that's where streamer fish can really be a pain in the butt, because it's a lot of work to fish those things. But for nymphing, I love to cast. Fishing should be fun. Catching fish is a blast, but fishing in and of itself should be an act that's fun and enjoyable. And if it's not fun to cast, I'm ready to go watch hockey. So the drop shot rig, however, as much as I'm crap talking it right now, it is deadly effective when used in the right place. You know, I had this little thing set up like there were some rocks here, and there's a ton of this in the Animas, and some of these biggest fish that we see, the reason we can't catch them is because they live in the crappiest, worst dumps. They're fast water. You can't really wade close to it, and you're gonna have to check nymph them. I've been doing it a little more. I've caught a few really big fish that usually when I'm doing, I know there's one there. I've seen him before, and I absolutely know he's down there. And I'll fish to him. I'll stay there for a while and catch him or not catch him. With this drop shot, you're kind of turning this rig around. This split shot is down on the bottom, and the whole key to the drop shot, you know, we won't use a tapered leader. We actually have a leader commercially made for that. Your best options for rods are probably, I don't know, Buck, we've talked about it. 10 footers is probably the most common. There's a few guys that use them a little bit longer. Those guys like to fish 3, maybe 4X. They fish pretty light a lot. Their whole thing is getting that fly down right now. The way I was talking about when somebody asked about covering the run, I was talking about covering up and down. With drop shot nymphing, you're casting it right here, and you're getting it down. You're only going to drift 3 feet. You're going for 3, maybe 4 feet of drift tops. The guys that are really good at it like to use tungsten bead flies, and they like to use a lot of split shot, a 3/0. Anything bigger than a BB, I start getting cranky. But those guys will fish 3/0, and you know, it gets that fly down really, really quickly. And they don't use strike indicators. They use. Let me see if I can find one of these leaders here.
Which one are you looking for here?
The check nymph, the Euro nympher. So there we go. So I'm gonna take this, and if everybody looks, you might want to take a look. This leader is, you can see the mono down there, which is the working end we're putting in front of the fish. They also use a red section. You can see that red, and that's to make it really visible. The guys that I've seen that are just deadly at this, they make their own, and they'll make sections of red, yellow, red, and that helps them to gauge how quickly or how far down their flies are getting. And here we go. Here's the yellow red. Can you guys, everybody see that? That's a commercially available product to aid you in that. And you know, I've even used this on my regular nymph rigs too, with success, telling me how quickly our flies get down, especially in the San Juan when they're eating little midge people like that far under the surface. I can see everything.
Like above the tippet?
Yeah, exactly. I'll still have this same working end on. In the drop shot, you turn this thing around. You'll put probably a tungsten bead fly on the bottom. Some guys would run a split shot. It's about this far from their other fly, or this stonefly's popular with them, and they'll run a smaller fly, and what they like to do is tie a blood knot here, leave a tag off of that, about 6 inches, and you tie that fly to that tag. So you've got leader coming up this way. That's where a lot of this comes in handy, really, in that. And once again, you're trying to get it down right now. Get it in front of a spot where you know there's a fish, or you sure as heck hope there is. Does that make sense to everybody? How's that explanation of Euro nymphing? I kind of suck at it. But I have done it, and I've worked with it, and it is effective. I've kind of modified some techniques with what I like to do and Euro nymphing, and I'm starting to really have some success with that. You watch me do it one time, so I know he's here. And I freaking got it. So,
The Umpqua rep was here, was it last year Tom had him in? 2 years ago.
Josh was last year.
Last year. And showed us how to tie
he showed you that Euro.
with the sections. And after about 3 knots, most of us were going, boy, that's a lot of stuff. You know? And I didn't know this was available.
Yeah,
This is the whole thing.
this is it. And
It's
exactly. It's all color coded. This Rio stuff is the bomb because it does have the two-tone, I think. They're both fantastic products.
That's
and they-
tippet. That's not tippet.
You know what this is it's not really tippet. I mean, for tippet, for the business end of your rig, you're still going to be using this stuff or this, whatever it is you use. This is more the working end of, that's you're going to have to cast it, not really cast it, you're going to lob it and get it in front of that rock. And this is called, I've heard guys call this a cider. And like I said, the different colors, it's probably about that long, yellow, red, yellow, and it helps you to tell how quickly you're getting in there.
But
And
this will do the same thing.
it will. You can always cut and put a piece of different color or whatever to help you if you need that.
So why not just use amnesia? I mean, you're slinging a big weight.
They do.
They do.
That's what I use.
That's usually what they use for the butt. They usually use that for the top end.
Yeah.
The one thing about amnesia is a shooting line. It's designed to be put on a spey rod or an old school shooting head, and that mono, you just blast that out there. I see people use it for leader butt. It's really kind of supple for that. The best leader butt ever known to mankind is this right here, 30-pound maximum. That's absolutely as good as you're going to get. It's stiff, it turns over well. So they'll use a butt section like that, and it aids them in seeing, helps them to find where everything is.
Colors too for depth. So you
Sure.
can see depth.
I've seen guys they make a chartreuse and a red, and I've seen guys put 2 sections. Yeah, that's the guys I see that are really good.
And then you're
That's
kind
what
of
they do.
leading. You're leading and you have a slight bow in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you see it straighten out, you set.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what
Check
the color's for.
The color helps you to spot that really easily. So, does that everybody kind of get understanding of that? Your own nymphing? Like I say, I suck at it. I don't know. Enough to be dangerous. And, any other thing? What have I not covered?
Strike indicators.
Strike indicators. That's an easy one.
That one?
Threw one up here.
Mike, look on your fly box.
Oh yeah, good call. These are the corks. There's 1,000 different kinds of commercially available strike indicators out here, and they all work. I've got 3 sizes of corks here. These 2 being the most commonly used. This one here, I think it's kind of hard to cast. My strike indicators, by and large, and once again, you're getting a little bit into my opinion here, more so than anything else. So feel free to disagree. This is my strike indicator. Been using it for years and years. And probably not doing any fly shops any favors with this, but
We have that, Mike.
you bet, we do sell this. There's little packs of it. There's also, if you look, these kind of pre-made ones where they make the little loop in there, and it's just like using this. My number one thing with yarn and why I use it so much. Number one, I'm a stubborn old man. Number two, it freaking works. It telegraphs the absolute lightest of light strikes. Now, on years of guiding, if you look around, all the young guys, all the new guys are using this. If Tom's on the river, I'm on the river, John, any of the old school guys, we're probably using yarn. And that's because it telegraphs those super light strikes. For me, I've used it for so many years that I'm just so darn used to looking at it too. Sometimes I can't see strikes on the cork, but I could see them on this. With the yarn, so like I said, we have the manufactured yarn that's in loop, but the way I attach yarn is either with a slip knot. I don't know if anybody can see this. This is where we need that little projector camera or something that's showing it up on the screen behind me. Does everybody know how to do a slip knot? Probably do. Probably seen it before. I prefer to use a clove hitch a lot, where I've got both of these loops. I'll put it in this clove hitch, pull her tight, and that'll be my strike indicator. Sometimes I'll have a bigger piece of yarn, sometimes a smaller one. For an average day of fishing on San Juan, this is probably the size I would use. I would probably make it a little heavier for fishing here because of the heavy current. You know, the strikes most of the time should be a little harder here than they are on the San Juan or something, but it doesn't always work that way. You know, also, you guys heard me mention that I love to cast. If I can't cast a rig, I just as soon go home and watch hockey. You notice something I did with this? I took my scissors and cut that down to a manageable size. That'll cast real well in the wind, and it's big enough to detect strikes.
Do you saturate that with fluid?
You do, and what I prefer to use is, once again, it's a product you can get just about any. This did say silicone mucilate on it at one time.
The green or the red?
The green. The red works good too, man. I don't know if there's much difference between the two. You see, I'm just going to rub it around on there. Usually, if there's not a lot of garbage in the water, this thing will float all day. It'll float just fine. You can also notice with the yarn, there's a little bit of an angle here. My leader's at an angle. If you do that with that slip knot, that's a pretty extreme angle and helps you get your flies down a little bit quicker. If you can fish a little bit lighter weight that way, and for me, that's the lighter weight I can fish, the better. You know, it makes it more fun to cast. And,
Can you adjust that for the depth?
you can adjust this for the depth, and more often than not, in my own, all you got to do is back it out and move it down, move it up, whatever. In the course of a day, I'm probably not adjusting the indicator that much more. Once again, it's all about the depth of water that you're fishing, and I've found that in fishing across the Rocky Mountains, I catch trout in the same depth of water, whether I'm fishing in the Kootenai River or I'm fishing here. I find fish that are actively feeding, looking for food, in water that's waist to chest deep. If it's much deeper than that, it's probably got fish in it, and they're probably asleep. So, or you might catch a bunch of suckers. It's a good spot to find some suckers.
Where do you get that?
Right there. We got the red and the green. Like I say, I don't think it really matters if it's red or green. I've had great success with either of them. And,
We're talking about the best fish being at this height. Do you fish the banks?
yeah. When this water's in runoff, once again, that water out in the middle, this is not just here, this is just about any river you go to. Those fish, it's pretty hard for them to sit out in these rocks in the middle That's pretty pushy out there. That's a lot of energy for them to spend, and they're not going to get much food return for that. They're pushed up on the banks. They're pushed in really the first third of the river. You'll see some slower areas where you've got adequate cover out there that'll hold some fish that are a little bit off the bank. But most of the time, these guys are pretty close to the bank when this water's really up in color. So once again, that kind of comes into the depth. I've caught 90% of my trout nymphing is this. That's anywhere I've ever been. And once it gets over, like if it's a pool that I can dive into, I'm probably not real keen on it because it's awfully deep. And trout by nature, particularly brown trout and rainbow trout that live in river, are not a deep water creature. You guys ever heard that story about divers going down to fix the dam? They're never going down there again because there's catfish there. That's the biggest bunch of shit I've ever heard in my life. Nothing can live in 200 feet of water. So the activity level, even if we go do a screen sampling for insects in here, most of the insects live in this deep of water. Stoneflies too, even big salmon flies, the sculpins, that's where the sunlight penetration is. There's less silt settled there. That's the life zone. That's like the thermocline of the river. And if you have a deeper spot below it where fish can find refuge, if it gets cold, they can drop into deeper. You can't miss with that. There's always going to be one there. So, bugs don't live in deep water. Nothing lives in deep water. This is the depth I find it, and I have everywhere I've ever been. So, anything else? Anybody else have any other questions about that or anything? Water depth? I hope the catfish analogy got that point through. I've heard that story everywhere I've been, and I've called it just like I just did now. Well, that's not true. Oh, yes, it is. See, yeah, okay. I've heard that everywhere I've been. But anything else I might have forgot to cover?
Do you mix up your streamer retrieve, or it just depends on the conditions, dead drift?
That's a really good question. Your streamer retrieve, if you are fishing slower water, maybe you do have a deep pool that you want to probe. I tend to fish pretty slow through that, but once again, in this depth of water, I like that thing moving. And I'll dead drift, these are deadly flies, which just kind of dead drifted on a tight line. You're not really fishing them slack, just kind of let them get down. And, they're moving a little, but you're really trying to drift them. And then other times with sculpins are not that great a swimmer, but they're really quick. They can go about this distance really quick. They're not really designed to go out and cruise around in the open water. They stay on the bottom and they dart. You'll see them if you walk around and just kind of watch. You'll see little fish, and they're sculpins. And you'll see them, and that's what they're good at. They can get from here to here really quick. I've never seen a sculpin do this, but I've had fish eat it when they do that. Yeah, a lot of the times, in the Animas, we're fishing tight spots, and this fly's going through. I think a big key for us is that fish sees this, and he identifies it immediately as, I don't have to eat for a week if I get that. He makes his mind up right here. So I try to keep that retrieve going, not real jerky, moving a little faster in the water if I can. And I'll even try to change directions with that fly a little bit. And sometimes when you pull it up, a fish has spotted that from over there, and he's going to get it. He's made his mind up, and he's like toilet flushes that thing. I think probably everybody here's seen that at one time or another. Yeah, that's a fish that's pretty charged, and he made his mind up right away. So, but yeah, I think changing your retreat speed is huge. I do know this, and this is something I tell clients all the time. We've usually got a lot of weight on these to get about that deep really quick, but we're probably not trying to get much deeper. And one of the things I like to say is, if you're hitting the bottom, if you're getting stuck on the bottom, you need to move that fly a little more, because you got to have that line tight, and you also want that fly moving. Once again, a trout probably doesn't see too many sculpins doing this or this. He sees them doing this, and they're used to that. And that's how they're used to catching them too. So, you got anything to add, boss?
No, I think you covered a lot.
All right.
What do you think, guys?
Yeah.